And welcome all to the August Quaker Coffee House. Thank you so much to Bob and Brud and Wendy and Glenn for doing this. I guess we'll start. I'm going to turn this over to Brud, who's going to share his slides and tell us about.
So I can share.
Here we go.
Okay, and then I share. And now I do. Look at that.
Yes.
So let me start out many years ago. I'm from Pennsylvania. My dad and mom had a small farm. We had, about when I was 4 or 5 years old, they got into raising sheep and chickens, and later horses. But my dad was primarily interested in birds. And we would go on Saturday afternoons when he got out of work. We'd often go to pigeon lofts and buy pigeons that I raised, or the chicken farms and check out chickens or game farms. So I always had an interest. He made an incubator out of compressed cardboard in the basement, and we would hatch ringneck pheasant eggs that the farmers, when they mowed the fields, would run over these nests, and they knew we would be able to hatch them. So we would hatch these eggs for them and raise, not for the farmers, but we would raise the young pheasants until they were ready to be released on their own. So I've always had that interest, and over the years, I've never been without some type of fowl, and always had chickens. For my 73 years, other than the first few years of my life, I've always had chickens of some kind or another. But many other different varieties of birds. So we're going to start out with the chickens I have now and the poultry. And we're going to show the first picture. And these are white Plymouth Rocks. And they're not a commercial bird. They are bred to a standard of perfection, which is like the Bible for chicken breeding. And it tells you exactly the width of the head the bird should have, the 20-degree angle from the horizontal of the back to the way the tail is without showing a real clear delineation, the number of points on the comb. So I've always just raised commercial birds most of my life, chickens, just for the eggs. But 10 or 15 years ago, I thought, well, that would be fun to get into something and just stick with it for a while. So I picked white Plymouth Rocks. And they're an American breed. I'm not sure where they were developed in this country, but they were admitted, and a standard was developed for them in, I'm looking at my notes here, I'm cheating. I believe 1888 these were. So the standard hasn't changed. So the way we breed these birds now are the way they appeared in 1888.
Wow.
If you want a backyard flock of chickens, you do not want to get geese, and you do not necessarily want to get any of those breeds. You would like to get a commercial bird from a hatchery or Agway or Paris Farmers Union or something like that, that will lay plenty of eggs for you. These are a dual purpose breed, both for meat and eggs. Right now they're not laying. I have, I think, 11 or 13 mature hens, and I get about 3 eggs a day, and I'm very happy with that right now. It's been hot, and they're also molting their feathers, which they do once a year. Let's go on to the next picture. this is just another picture of them. Each one of my birds is identified with a band with a unique number on it and a color. And I keep an Excel spreadsheet on all the birds that tells me when they hatch, so their age, and what their lineage is. This bird right in the front of the picture is a cockbird, also called a rooster. And he's from Massachusetts. I have a good friend down there that shows poultry almost every weekend or when shows are going. They're not showing right now because of the virus, but he travels all over and shows his birds. He's very successful, and he likes my birds, even though I don't show. So he and I exchange birds each year, primarily male birds for fresh blood and good breeding stock. And that's kind of fun to do. Yeah. Oops, that's not a good picture. You can't see the whole body of him, but that is. And he was. I obtained him last year, so he's just a year old. Very good-natured. To me, it makes no difference if one is a bad disposition or a good disposition. I've had both, and I'm not in. It's a minor issue if one is bad disposition, so I just kind of ignore that. Plymouth Rocks, like brown eggs, varying in color, not a real dark brown egg. The standard calls for the males to weigh 9.5 pounds and the hens to weigh 8.5 pounds. So they're a large bird, and they're penalized if they're larger than that. And I have a few that I'm sure tip the scales much larger than that. I have some 3-year-old hens that are enormous. But I love them, so they stay. And yeah, let's go on to the next one.
Do you use the feathers?
Beg your pardon?
Do you use the feathers when they molt?
Oh, I do not use the feathers. And if anyone wants feathers, we have millions of white feathers everywhere here. They're molting. The old birds are molting. This picture is young pullets. Probably they're not this year's pullets, but I don't think. They're probably 10 or 12 weeks old, these birds are. The ones I have now, that this year's pullets, are starting to lose their first baby feathers, which these have, and attaining their adult plumage. And after they attain their adult plumage, then their combs will get red and they will start thinking about laying. It's a breed that doesn't lay early, maybe 20 or 22 weeks. If you buy commercial birds, they'll lay much earlier at 17 or 18. Yeah, that's the thing. And these are some young cockerels out in the yard, 3 young cockerels and the other pullets. And I think this picture was taken a few years ago. That's not this year also. Oh, there's an incubator.
That's a great picture.
Yes, yes.
No, I was just saying.
That's a partial picture of the inside of the chicken coop. They have laying boxes. They have favorite laying boxes. You'll find that the same hen will lay in the same box day after day when she lays. And but they're just in there at night. They're shut in tightly to be secure from predators. And, actually, they look pretty clean. When it's muddy out, they tend to look a little dirty. Yep. I had always walked around a cheap incubator, and where I had to hand turn eggs and had 4 hatches. And a number of years ago, I decided I'm just going to invest in a state-of-the-art incubator. So I did, and it's wonderful. It holds 385 eggs. I collect eggs for about 10 days and put them, you can see the blue tray at the bottom, and that does not go incubator. I have other trays. I think 2 times a day. Let me just, we just got a warning we may be booted off. So if we get booted off in just a few moments, of the eggs decrease. So we put them in at 10 days, as many eggs as I have, and I can do that once a week. And they slide into those 3 shells. Those 3 shells turn and tilt. And it tilts and changes the position of the eggs every hour, 24 times a day. And the tub up on the top is for water, for humidity. So I put the eggs in there, turn it on, it's state of the art, it's set for 99.5 degrees or 100 degrees, either one works fine, and close the door. And other than adding water now and then, I have nothing to do with it. I just put the eggs in and sit back and wait until the 18th day. On the 18th day, well, first of all, incubation lasts 21 days. So at 18 days, 3 days before they're due to hatch, I take them out of the hatching trays and put them in the black tray at the bottom of the incubator that you see. And I don't turn them anymore. And I layer that with old dish towels, and it can be packed with eggs pretty tight. And I put old dish towels in there, so when the chicks start hatching, they have a good surface to get a grip with their feet, so they don't get spraddle legs and do slits on newspaper. So they start out with very strong legs and upright, and I avoid that problem. And there's a bunch of chicks that have just been removed from the incubator. Of course, they're white, and I can't sex them. It's a real scientific thing to be able to sex them, but last year I had chicks hatching every Sunday, which got absolutely crazy because you cannot combine different groups easily. So this year I became a little wiser and just did one big hatch, and I think it may have been 50-some chicks hatched, which was just fine and easy. And we're going to move on to my other newer interest now, which are canaries. And I've had other breeds of cage birds in the past, but I'm new to canaries. And a year or so ago, I thought, as I get older, what can I do that's a little easier? We've always had cattle, sheep, alpacas, pigs, everything. And I'm 73, and I needed something. I've never been without something to take care of. So I decided, well, canaries would be interesting. They look like normal birds, which I like. And so I go to poultry swaps regularly or for sales, and this one was down in New York State somewhere, about 2.5 hours from here. And I went down there, and a fella had a cage full of canaries, and I bought 2 of them, and then I bought a couple more. And so these are American Singer canaries. They come in, you can have song canaries or type canaries. Type canaries have the most bizarre body shapes, or color canaries, where they breed for really gorgeous colors. But these are American Singers, and they come in all colors. As a matter of fact, I thought all canaries were yellow until I got my canaries, and I had no yellow. But this one yellow one that you see in this picture is a baby I hatched this year, the chick. And the one sitting on the door of the cage there is more typical of the birds I have. So they come in all colors, and they do sing. they're also molting right now. And so they're not singing right now. That's called a variegated canary. And you see the leg band, the green leg band, which has an identifying number on it. And I also keep spreadsheets for the canaries with the lineage, date of birth, that type of thing. So, and that's a new bird I just bought. He just arrived from Florida about a month ago, roughly. He's reddish in color, and he has a crest on his head. It looks like his feathers are pretty mussed up, and I could do without that, but he is a crested bird, and he has adjusted very well, gets along very well with the others. So, yep. So in April, I think I got them in October. In April, one of the females started ripping newspaper, and that is a sign that they're ready to start breeding and building a nest. So I put her in a cage with a divider in it and put a nest cup, a plastic nest cup in there.
Oh, down here.
And she started building nests, but I put a lot of nesting material in it, such as you see the fibers, there's cotton, and there's a pad in the bottom. When they lay an egg a day until their clutch is full. They will start incubating after the second or third egg. And that is not good because in this case, she had 5 eggs and the last 2 eggs would have hatched later. They have a 14-day incubation. So what you do is when she lays the first egg, you remove it. And they're so tiny. But I used a plastic spoon and removed the egg. And next picture is dummy eggs.
Oh my God,
So these are little dummy eggs, and I replaced her egg with a dummy egg, and she doesn't know the difference. And so her egg I had in a bowl on a piece of tissue, and each day I would do that until she laid her last egg, and I knew she was done. And I would turn her own eggs with the plastic spoon several times a day in the little bowl, just so the yolk would not adhere to the side. And when she was done her clutch, I removed the dummy eggs and put her eggs back in the nest for her. So all her chicks would hatch on the same day. So this is the day where the first chick hatched. It was a pretty exciting day for me because I had never hatched a canary before. And it looked pretty ugly. She had 5 eggs, 3 hatched, and 2 were not good. They were not fertile for some reason. And we're going on to another day 1, day 6. That's it. This picture is the 3 chicks that hatch at 6 days old. Interestingly, I always thought if you touched a bird's chicks, they would not, they would abandon them. But the canaries, at any rate, they're totally unfazed by that. Next one. And there they are at 13 days. No, that's the 3. And so there's 3 babies there, and they're getting their pin feathers, and we can determine what colors they're going to be. Yep. And here they are the day before they leave the nest. They actually look like birds. And the next day they were out of the nest. The parents, particularly the male, continues to feed the baby, and they chase him and beg with screaming and flapping their wings. He feeds them for several days. The female is more interested in starting a new nest, but I was not interested in having this pair nest again, so I discouraged that. The 6 you see in this picture are another pair, And she laid 6 eggs and hatched all 6 babies. I sold 5 of the young ones this year. So I hatched 9 and sold 5 and bought 2 new birds from Florida. Canaries love vegetables. They're not just seed eaters. They do eat various seeds, but they eat loads of broccoli, apples, oranges. I boil various seeds for them for 20 minutes and put it on a dish, and they love boiled softened seeds. I've grown millet this year, and they like the millet heads, but that I buy for them, but I've been picking them when they're green, and he sprays with millet, and they just go crazy over it. A couple times a week, I have 3 cages, large flake cages on the outside. It's a porch. It's an enclosed porch. It's not a screen porch. And I have 3 birds in each cage. I have 9 birds now, and a couple times a week, I prop the doors open, and they all come out, and they fly around and intermingle and chase each other for several hours. And at dinner time, I put their evening meal in, which tonight was fresh corn on the cob, romaine lettuce, and green millet sprays. And they go right back in as soon as I do that. And as soon as 3 fly in a cage, I close the door and I go to the next cage and put their food in, and 3 more fly in until they're all in. So I'm having a great time with them. I just feel very positive about that experience. I'm very happy just to have the poultry and the canaries at this time. Any questions?
So actually, yeah. How do we ask a question?
Just ask it.
Oh, so you can hear me.
We can hear you.
So I'm curious why, if you take the eggs away from the hens or the mother canary, so they're already fertilized and they can be raised in the incubator?
No. Well, with the chickens I hatch in the incubator.
You had to what? Wait, I didn't understand.
Okay. The chicken eggs I put in the incubator. The
Right.
canary eggs I take away until she lays her full clutch, and then put them. They are already fertilized by the male, or she has been fertilized and she lays fertile eggs. And I put them all back in at the same time. So her chicks all have the same advantage when they hatch. There's not hatching 2 or 3 days later.
But what I'm curious about is that the eggs in both cases can be removed from the mother.
Yes.
And if they're kept warm, will they just hatch?
No. And you do not want to keep them warm. You shouldn't refrigerate them, but they should not be in a hot room even. You want them to not start developing until you actually want them to start incubating. And the chickens have, a lot of them don't have any desire to hatch chicks, but every year 1 or 2 will go what you call brooding and decide she wants to hatch some eggs. And usually each year I let 1 hen, I'll set her with 12 eggs and let her hatch and raise chicks. This year I didn't have a single chicken hen that wanted to go broody and incubate her own eggs.
So how long does it take if a chicken broods? How many days does she have to sit on the eggs?
21 days.
21.
And while they're brooding, they're turning the eggs regularly.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
You can see them regularly shuffling their body, and they're rolling the eggs. Or you can watch them with their head under their body, and they're turning the eggs. They have an incredible instinct.
Wow.
Things right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's so cool, Brud. there's so much stuff that you think you know about how people do things or things that you have no idea. I wanted to say welcome to Abby too, who's just joined us. Abby's,
Thanks, Cheryl.
hi.
I didn't want to interrupt, so I came in with no video.
We're glad you're here. And Bob's just about to, Bob, Brud, first, thank you again.
Yeah, that's great.
You can watch it again on YouTube shortly.
Okay.
And Bob's gonna do his presentation for us.
Actually, let me see. Can I was gonna do something live before the slides. Can I do that? Or
Sure, if you just click stop screen share.
okay.
And then we'll all put you on speaker view.
Oh, okay.
And you can do something live, and then when you're ready to show us the slides, just go
Okay.
back to screen share.
Okay, so my invite was to talk about fiber. I've kind of always done fiber, I guess, for 50 plus years. But since I retired, I've done it to the point that I describe myself as a fiber artist, which basically means that I've grown fiber from the sheep on our farm as well as the alpacas, primarily on our farm, and for the purpose of producing good.
Left corner.
I mean, everything from knitted things,
do that.
but mostly woven and hooked things with my punch needle rug hooking needle. So what I'm going to do is to talk a little bit about fiber. I've got fiber, raw fiber, as it comes off the alpaca. This is literally as it was shorn off the animal without any processing at all. If in order to work with that in converting into some kind of a product, I need to wash it and prepare it for use. This gray is a little bit harder to see, but this has been washed and combed so it's ready to spin by hand or by machine so that it can be used. When that is spun commercially around a cord so that it can be woven, it comes out in these kind of rovings that I use in the first picture that I show, rovings like this that I use to weave rugs with, but it can also be spun in finer forms, so that this is a bulky yarn that I use for rug hooking, and you'll see those pictures, or it can be spun by hand or machine into a knitting weight yarn that I use for some of my weaving and as well. So that's raw fiber processed by hand or by mill to get to the point where I can make some finished products that I would like to share with you. So that's what I will do now and walk through a bunch of those. So the first couple of pictures are woven projects that I've done. This is a woven. All of the material, all the products that you see are natural. Well, almost all of them, at least these initial ones, are natural colors of the fiber that came right from my animals. So I had brown, gray, white, fawn, black, all of these animals on the farm. So this is a rug that was woven. It's what would be called a rag rug, but rather than using strips of cloth, I'm using these strands of alpaca fibers for the weft, with a linen warp that goes from one end to the other. They can be done in all kinds of color combinations depending upon how I decide to change the weft. The first one was a kind of gradual changing from one color to the other. This one I used the same um, it's the same fiber used for the weft, but I used olive black here, then olive white, and then olive brown. The ends can be done in tassels like this or in a finished one like the first one. I can also do more complicated rugs. This one does not, let me show you this one first. This is my natural fibers, but this would be made now of yarn rather than those rovings. So this would be almost the same kind of yarn that would be used if you wanted to, if you were knitting something. But this is then woven through a fairly intricate pattern on a 4-harness loom that I have in my studio, and makes a pretty impressive overshot pattern kind of thing they call it. And another one that I like is the one I showed before. We'll go back to it. It's called a shaker rag rug. So here we're looking at actually yarn, again, not my fiber. This was wool that I used for this. But you actually twisted several different colors together to create this chevron thing, so that the shaper rug is the chevron pattern with spacing, weft threads, and then it's bound on all sides, including the ends, like you would bind a quilt. So it's the number of different ways that you can finish rugs. The only other thing I have on here to show is a woven thing. This is scarves that I wove on the same loom. So again, these are my alpaca natural fibers, in this case, browns and whites, with a tassel end. So for the most part, with my natural fibers, I'm doing scarves, blankets, rugs. That's pretty much it. I also have gotten into using cotton cord and done placemats and napkins and towels and all that kind of stuff. But that's another story someday. Now going to the hook rugs, which is really what I'm into right now. So I'm most interested in what my fibers can do with a hook rug.
Wow.
So this now is a rug that is made with the Oxford punch needle. So it's made like a traditional hook rug, only what I'm using here is yarn, alpaca yarn, instead of fabric strips. And with a special needle, I'm pushing yarn from the back to the front of the rug to give the finished product. So this is just an example of my browns and whites and fawns.
Interesting.
That is really lovely.
It's really interesting. It's fascinating.
I like the design very much.
I just love that you raise the animals and harvest the yarn and then transfer it into this wonderful creative energy. It's great. Really interesting.
So I'm wondering if Bob's gotten frozen somewhere.
It's possible.
I think I just got sent back as host. Why don't we wait for a moment and see if they're able to come back?
Well, that was really wonderful. Are they related, the two of them?
Yeah, they're partners.
They're partners. Okay.
And they raise the animals together. They used to have like a zillion animals, the alpacas and
where are they? Where are they located?
And if you go down Route 30 towards Castleton, they're in Sudbury, just after the Whiting border.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
It's really fascinating.
yeah. So I hope that they'll come back, because the rest of Bob's slides are amazing, because
really?
I'll show you the pictures of live animals that then he's made rugs out of. I mean,
Wow.
he's the designs. Why don't we will just take a second while we're waiting for them to come back. I will show you the garden, which is about 7 minutes. But if they come back on,
I hope they do. I'd
I
love to
hope they do,
see.
because you'll want to see the end of this. We'll send the
Nice.
slide pack, even if they can't come back on. So this is gardens.
Welcome to the Goodwin Acre.
And a quarter.
I know we're not supposed to like this loose stripe, but it looks very beautiful against the goldenrod.
Can you all see this?
So what are we looking at, Cheryl?
These are the Goodwin's gardens.
Oh,
Wendy and Glenn's gardens.
At the weeping birch tree.
Hear them?
It looks kind of sad.
oh, it's beautiful.
Everything's a little sad this year.
Golly, look at the 10-foot sunflowers.
All of these are volunteers. And every year I really try hard to dig them all up so they don't shade my garden, but
An invasion.
Right out the compost.
all right. We're panning over to the compost bins that Glenn rebuilt this year.
It's a serious garden.
Voila.
The best squash grow in compost.
It's beautiful.
All free materials.
Bring me your pallets, yearning to breathe free.
Pretty cool.
Okay, you get this one, too.
I hope I'm not making you all dizzy by stumbling around here.
There's Wendy's office up there.
Huh. Do you ever collect the sunflower seeds? That's a lot of seeds.
Zinnias have been lovely this year.
Hmm.
Strangely, right next to them is a giant marigold that has yet to blossom.
Hmm.
Oh, my shadow. I've decided this year that as much as I know about gardening, seems like it's still just a mystery. So this is a vegetable garden, hiding amongst the sunflowers. And some blackberry bushes that got transplanted this year because they were not happy in the shade.
We demonstrate the pear tree.
Our pear tree's pretty happy this year.
Best every year.
We got a kitty looking for voles. Best hunter ever. Really beautiful this year. Are really beautiful this year. Who knew hibiscus could grow in a northern climate?
Wow.
We got shiny stuff on the elderberry to keep the birds away, so we actually got to harvest some this year. The flocks were pretty unhappy without the rain this year. And the giant butternut trees. Maybe not long for this bird. Oh, we should go look at the steps that Glenn built this year.
We got to throw up your new wall.
I think we had 4 in here. All got undermined and collapsed. And built some new ones. Built some terraces so that this hillside doesn't fall down so much. Whoa, sorry, that was a little fast. We should look at the back gardens. These are known as the Duke 'em Out gardens because whatever grows here, grows here. One year, all these rudbeckia just disappeared. Very interesting, the rhythm of. A couple of years ago, all the goldenrod disappeared as well. This is our giant Siberian elm.
Wow.
A lovely tree. And some more steps that Glenn built a few years ago. Mostly rocks pilfered from slight places and riverbeds.
Why did I build the wall, my children?
Built the wall to keep the garden safe.
It's a lot of work to build a wall.
Maybe not. We have a huge garter snake that lives underneath the steps and or in the wall. And I think, folks, that may be.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Wendy and Glenn.
So
much-
lush.
Yeah, I think they taped that about a couple of weeks ago. So
Wow.
I still don't see Bob and Brud back. And which is, I think I can show you Bob's slide pack, but it's not going to be nearly as interesting as hearing him. Here he is. Hooray.
Good.
All right.
Hey,
I'm going to make you the host again.
okay.
Cheryl, may I quickly ask you a question?
Yeah.
Those hibiscus?
Yeah.
I would love to know what variety they were because I love hibiscus, but I'm in zone 4 and I'm scared to death to plant any because I lose things unless they're very hardy.
Annie,
And
I bet that Bob and Brud, I bet that Wendy and Glenn will tell you that. They're not on this
Okay.
call right now, but I bet they'll dig some up too and give them to you.
Oh,
We
that
all
would be
dig up
wonderful.
each other's plants and spread them around. So.
That would be wonderful.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to these rugs.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
we can
Yes.
hear you and we can see it again. Thank you.
Okay, so that's where we left off. That was my first rug. Then this next one is not so much with my. They're not all. These are some wool. The sheep yarn is wool from our sheep. The background is wool that I hand dyed. The flowers are hand dyed wool from our sheep. So this is more
Wow.
of our sheep wool rather than my alpaca wool. But that was one of my favorite rugs. Actually, was the first one that I actually did with the punch needle. Not only rugs, though, I've done. You can do so many things here. Illustrations that I've done. Again, the the face of the needle design, which I've come up with my alpaca fibers. And then I have done some other kind of fun things. And this is one that particular sheet, one I hand dyed this background yarn, grays and whites from my stash. And this is actually I think it's a Cotswold fiber that I actually pulled through the foundation fabric. So this is a three-dimensional fleece that you see on this particular sheet.
Bob, can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
So can we go back to the sheep one that you're just on? So I can see the evenness of the stitching, except where it's like the fleece. And did I miss what you said about that? Did you do it with a different stitch or a different?
The evenness of the rest of the picture is all done with the same size punch needle. So that determines the even height of the loop. What I did with this is I took a whole bag of raw Cotswold fiber. Actually used a traditional hook and pulled and pulled each little clump of fiber through, so that all of these are long strands of
that makes sense,
of a white Cotswold sheet. Yep.
Nice. That's really nice. Thanks.
One, so I tried to do a couple of things. One of the things my sister wanted me to do is ask me whether I could do a picture of her dog. So one of the fun things I've done with my hooking is to make this hook rug. It ended up as a chair pad, or no, as a ottoman cover. So she sent me a picture of Charlie, and I converted that into this rug pattern. And the next picture isn't too clear, but that's a picture of Charlie, real Charlie, and the hook rug ottoman that I made there. Now another friend who wanted me to do something similar, so they sent me this picture of their Australian Shepherd, Carter, and asked if I could make a pillow out of Carter. So what I did was to take that picture and convert that into that hook rug pillow. Kind of the most significant thing I did is design and hook this rug, which I did as a part of the course that I took to be certified as a punch needle rug hooking instructor. So these are 4 of the alpacas that I had at the time, named Shadow, Naria, Cosette, and Luna. These are actual headshots of the 4 of the alpacas, all done with fiber that came from those respective animals. I used their browns and fawns to do the banners around there, and the background is all hand dyed white wool from my sheep that I did to kind of offset those. And 2 of those headshots I show you closer up. That's Shadow. She was an all black alpaca, and when I actually turn these things into a piece of art, I need to use some colors. I've used some blues and obviously fawns and browns and other colors to accent, to give some depth to the thing. And then this was Naria, who had a particularly, and what I did with this 3-dimensional stuff, in Naria's case in particular, I used a needle that gave me a really long loop, pushed a really long loop, maybe 3 or 4 inches long, through the back, and then I cut each of those loops and then gave her a haircut, so that she had this kind of ragged, tousled look, which is what she looks like. So those are some of the kinds of fun things I've done with animals. So lest I run out of time, I'll finish with a few other pictures and then take any questions. This is a technique that we can use, and here we're using hand-dyed yarn with variegated shades of blues and greens in these leaves and this lily that gives you a kind of a three-dimensional look. All of this is done with the same size punch needle, pushing a loop of yarn from the back to the front. This was done with a finer needle, so I could do a little bit more detail. And this again is done with shaded colors of green and rose in this particular flower picture. And then the final one of these artsy kinds of things is this hydrangea that again was done with 8 different shades of lavender.
Wow.
In these different
Bob, that's
petals
beautiful.
to
It's
give
really beautiful.
Oh my
the
gosh,
effect
all the
of that.
gradations
Yeah,
of color. Wow.
It's really
That's kind of
beautiful.
fun. That's kind of fun.
I really like the rose one that was just before this. It kind of
Yeah,
stopped me.
what happened? Okay, where are we going here? Oh, there we go. Back to that one.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fun. That was done with a thread about the size of a worsted weight yarn, as opposed to the bulkier threads that the other ones use. Actually, the hydrangea was as well, so that you could get a lot of nice detail in that. Let me show you a few other things I've done, then we can go back to any you have pictures of, but I wanted to show you this, if Abby's still on, she'll recognize this because I made this for my daughter Abby, and what this is a tote. So
I love that bag.
Opens up as a bag, so I use some traditional McAdoo patterns and convert and put them into this kind of a tote bag, which is lined and leather handles and another kind of fun
Really
thing that you
nice.
can do. And speaking of my relatives, I made this for my one each for my 2 grandsons who are students at Middlebury. And,
That's great.
the logo and their year of graduation
Here's the
is
bag, Dad.
2022. Put that in there. And then one last one,
That's so great.
which is back to wools that I did with a different palette, but this is about a 6-foot long runner.
Wow.
Of these four butterflies.
Wow.
So I can get into looking at some of the swallowtail, the monarch, the purple something or other, and this is an American something or other. But again, this using a particular colorway of yarn that I used from a friend of mine who hand dyes this. So I didn't hand dye these colors, but she did. So that's butterfly. So that's the end. And glad to ask any
Great.
questions, you can answer any questions if you have them, or go back to any picture you want to look at.
So Bob, this is Karen, and I've watched you at various craft markets and the Christmas bazaar and so forth, and always admired your work and always wanted to stop by and see you. My daughter did some rug hooking when she was younger. We lived in Baltimore, and it was the more traditional one. But I've shown her pictures of some of your work, and she's really fascinated. But I had no idea about the whole backstory of the fibers. So this was fascinating. I think your work is beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So I want to thank you and the other presenters. It's been an extraordinary evening. I just love seeing our local people sharing what they love to do and such wonderful creative energy. We're lucky to be here in Vermont on so many levels. Thank you.
Glad to be with you. Thank you, Cheryl, for setting it up. Bye-bye.
Right here,
We're holding it down
right here.
right now.
I really liked the striped pieces in the beginning of the weavings. I thought they were striking. And I think it's amazing you can do so many different, well, what do you call it? Groupings
Design.
of
Yeah.
your work, a lot of different styles. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Mimi.
I liked all of the animals' expressions. I thought they were wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoy doing them. So that is kind of a fun thing, and it's definitely not producing some, not mass producing anything, because each one of them is unique.
Bob, did you do the one that's on the wall behind you?
I did.
Yeah.
I think that's actually one of those you saw that I had on the picture, but that is one.
Yeah, it looked, yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I get a sense of the size of it now.
Oh yeah. That's that one.
It's as big as our two heads.
Have to say, I absolutely loved the shapes of the chickens, the white chickens. I mean, I'm a sculptor, and just they made me want to draw and sculpt. Do you know what I mean? They look so extraordinary. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Well, B,
That's
we live near you. We're 5 miles away from you. Stop over.
Really?
Yes, we're in Sudbury, right out Route 73.
That's
Right.
what I thought. And I have some black alpaca from you.
So what's the name of your farm?
Crown, my alpaca business is Crown Point Alpaca.
But I'm just saying, if I came out Route 73, because I'm in Brandon and then I'm going over to Benson, so I come out Route 73 and where it joins Route 30, which way do I go?
You go south towards Benson, and we're the first house on the right.
About a quarter of a mile.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. What color is the house?
White.
White.
With a red barn on a curve in the road.
Okay. Okay. I might see you sometime.
Yes, good.
I mean,
Thank you.
I didn't use this as a marketing tool, but I would say that I have any of those fibers and yarns and things.
That's
I
great.
can sell, if anyone is interested in using them for your own handiwork.
Well, when you were showing those pillows, I kept thinking, I just want to nestle up to one. If that's alpaca yarn, that'll probably feel great.
Oh, it's wonderful. And Bob, I am absolutely taken by that early piece that you showed that had the dragonflies.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
It's
I've
stunning.
actually made that 3 times. I've made that pattern 3 times. I've sold 2 of them, and I still do have one of them, and I do like that a lot.
I do fiber too, but rug hooking or any kind of hooking is something my hands won't do. So I'm just going to have to admire yours.
Thank you.
Bob, do you draw on the canvas before you start?
Yes, you do, Sophia. You trace a pattern. Either it's a pattern that I designed myself, or one that I've used from a host of traditional patterns that are available. But in either case, you actually trace that pattern onto a foundation cloth, which in most cases we're using what's called a monk's cloth. You can use linen, you can use burlap, but for the most part, it's monk's cloth. And you do trace the pattern, at least the basic outline of the pattern. You can be very creative and flexible with the way in which you punch your loops beyond that. But I always do start with a pattern that is traced on the foundation block. Yes.
I'd love to know which ones you drew.
Which ones I do? Which
That
drew?
you drew.
Oh, I drew.
Yeah.
Well, the alpaca quartet, I call that, with the 4 alpaca heads. That was one of my own originals.
Mhm.
The dog heads that I did for my sister and my neighbor are patterns that I drew. In those cases, I actually took a picture and transferred that into a kind of stencil drawing, and then manipulated that onto the cloth so that I could work with it. A number of those pillows that have either the Lover's Cross or some kind of a Celtic cross, I did all those. Those are my own patterns. So I've done a number of patterns myself, Sophie. Sophia.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Brud and Bob
was
and
great.
Wendy and Glenn. It was great. And thank you all for coming. It makes it seem more real when
It
there's
was great.
a little audience here. So,
Great.
and
You're
just
very
putting it out there,
welcome.
any of you would like
Thank
to
you, Cheryl.
share your passions, your art, your creativity, let us know.
Thanks.
Have a great
Good night.
evening, guys.
Bye-bye.
Night. Bye.
Good night, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Night.
Well, that's look up this one.